Top story today. Brittney Griner is now back home in Texas, nearly 10 months after she was arrested in Russia for carrying cannabis oil. The US basketball star freed in a prisoner exchange with Russia for the notorious arms dealer Viktor Bout. Well, covering this story for us today is our senior reporter Catherine Norris-Tran. And Catherine, first of all, just tell us who Bout is and why his release is raising so many eyebrows.
Well, Nadia, Viktor Bout is known as one of the world's most prolific arms dealers, if not the most prolific. Very notorious figure. He actually was portrayed in the 2005 film, the Nicolas Cage film, Lord of War. And he's been accused of supplying arms to Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, rebels in Rwanda, the FARC forces of Colombia. And he was first imprisoned in Thailand after US Special Ops sting. And they said that he'd agreed to sell anti-aircraft weapons to arms buyers, to informants, posing as arms buyers. And he was convicted in 2011 for endangering the lives of Americans, and was kind of halfway through a 25-year prison sentence in the US. And he's been released in exchange for Brittney Griner, the famous women's basketball player there, who was convicted in Russia after travelling with vape cartridges containing cannabis oil. So lots of people are criticising this, saying that it's a very lopsided prisoner exchange. It's not like in the Cold War, the days of the Cold War, when spies were exchanged. And so Joe Biden's administration, while lots of pressure had been on him to get Brittney Griner's release, there's also been criticism now of people saying, look, this isn't perhaps the right move. There's another American, Paul Whelan, a former US Marine who's still in captivity. The Biden administration is saying, look, they did what they could. It's better to get one American, they say was wrongfully detained, released, rather than none. But he's getting pressure from both sides of the House, but particularly from Republicans, saying that this creates a dangerous precedent. What does it mean for other Americans? Will they be arrested and held, wrongfully detained and used as bargaining chips? So lots of questions opened up by this.
Indeed, and Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, has today reacted to the news of the swap. Let's have a listen to a bit of what he had to say.
Are other exchanges possible? Yes, everything is possible. This is the result of negotiations and the search for compromise. In this case, compromise was found, and we aren't refusing to continue this work in the future.
So, Catherine, what do you make of those comments from Vladimir Putin and the idea that such negotiations between the US and Russia might continue in the future?
Well, it's really interesting to hear those on the back of this hostage release, prisoner exchange, because this is, some of the American critics, US critics of Joe Biden, saying this was a gift to Putin. This is giving him positive headlines at a time when Russian forces are doing badly on the battlefield. And basically, I'm sure Vladimir Putin would absolutely love to get to the negotiating table. A lot of people in Ukraine are worried that Russia would love to freeze the battle lines where they are at the moment to try and consolidate some of the territory that they've taken illegally from Ukraine so far, some of the areas that they've invaded in the Donbass and in the south of Ukraine, and negotiate and give them time to rearm and regroup. And in Ukraine, they fear then, use that as a launch pad for future attacks going forward. Russia's obviously been suffering on the battlefield, been suffering defeats in the Kharkiv region, down in the south, in the Kherson region. So they have basically got everything to gain from negotiating at this point. No doubt Putin would like to portray that as some kind of victory at home to people. But the Ukrainians at the moment don't seem like they want to negotiate at all. They want to try and capitalise on those previous gains. Now, Joe Biden, when Emmanuel Macron was in Washington, he did say, he for the first time said that he could perhaps envisage one day talking to Putin, but with caveats, only in consultation with NATO allies, and if Putin shows an interest to ending his invasion. Those were Joe Biden's words. And at this stage, we can't say that the signal's coming from the Russian leader.